It's okay. I'm not going to move too hard to move. There's free stuff up here. Free stuff. Okay, like the clock says that it's time to go. I just want to walk you through a couple things. We're going to do a tiny bit of discussion about a few little points that we went through. I want to remind you of the fact that both of your exams are open book, which means you can bring any written, that's not electronic, any written version of anything you wish to the test. This includes your notes, textbook, anything that I've given you, any assignments. You can bring anything you want. Okay, it's open book. Often people who are not used to writing this type of exam think that that makes it easier. It doesn't, because the exam isn't the same as a closed book exam. If it were, that would be stupid. I would ask you a question and you'd look it up. Okay, and that isn't really a good test of your ability or your knowledge. So I ask you to go to a higher level, which is you have to understand this material. And if you don't understand it, it will not help you to have anything written because you just don't know what to do with it. Okay. So what I suggest that you do, and it's fairly important because if you've understood what I've said, you'll also understand that you don't and you shouldn't be cramming for this type of exam, because the stuff that you're going to try and get yourself memorized, you don't really need to memorize it. What you do need to do is understand it. And that is why it is way, way better for you to learn everything every week really well. You'll do far better. If you try to cram stuff at the end, you're never going to understand it well enough to be able to use it. And this is particularly true of contracts when we get onto the second section, because contracts is harder. All right, so with that in mind, does anybody have any questions about anything at all? What did we talk about last week? I have to know where we're at. And just so you know why I do this for two reasons. Because I feel that if I open up the door, sometimes people will ask questions when you need to. Okay? And the second reason I do it is because I actually teach this course multiple times in a week in multiple places. And it's really hard for me to always remember exactly where I got to with this class as opposed to the other one. So it's kind of useful to me, if you can, to tell me what we've covered so that I know where we're at. And once I know where we're at, I can then take it from there. So what did we talk about last week?
Common law.
We talked about common law, which is what?
It's very slow.
What is it though? Okay, let me try again. How many of you don't know what common law is? Okay, how many of you do? Okay, answer the question. What is it then? What? Judges' decisions are common law. You should get that. You should understand what that means, why it is, how it works, what happens in the road. You should understand what that is. Okay? So, and we talked about the stealing of a horse. Remember all that stuff we did? We did that, right? And that was to show you how this works. It wasn't to tell you about stealing horses. It was to tell you how common law works. Okay? Don't steal horses. They bite. All right, what else did we learn about? learned about statute law. What is statute law? It's the law that is created by government and put in books that are called statutes, which is older.
Common law.
Common law. Common law goes way back before we even had governments. Right? It's an older version. So, when you have a judge deciding a case, they will be making common law. When you have statutes being made by government, they are making statute law. Right? And did I tell you that statute law always trumps common law? In other words, if there's a conflict between what a judge says and that the government can change the law at any time by passing a statute, they can change statute law because they're allowed to change it. They can repeal or amend a statute. That changes statute law. And if they make a rule in a statute that isn't what the judges were using, the judges have to start using the statute law. It overrides it. You understand that? Is that all we covered?
Yes.
That's it? That doesn't seem like we did that in 5 minutes. Didn't we take longer than that last week? Does anybody have any questions about any of that?
Broke down the statute.
Pardon me?
You gave us an example.
I did. I gave you a fake statute, right? To show you how it worked. And we broke it down, and we found that we still had to interpret the meaning of statutes. And we did that through statute law and common law. Common law clarifies statutes. Right? And if you want to understand the law, which one should you know?
Both.
That's the right answer. You can't understand the law without having both. Because some law is only in the decisions of judges, and some law is only in the statutes. We have both, we need both. And I also told you that in this course, I haven't really started teaching you rules yet. When I do, I generally don't tell you whether that rule comes from common law or statute law, because you don't really need to know. You need to know that there are two places that law comes from. Any questions anyone has about anything at all? All right? I tend to ladder in this course, and you're going to start to see it, where I start here, and then I go over here, and I build this up, so you move up a little bit, and then I go back over here, and then I go back over here, and as we go through this, you will start to see me. I'm going to do a lot tonight. I keep on adding pieces to something that I've explained that is meant to have you understand another part of it. And sometimes, although I hate doing this, but sometimes I have to teach you something, get you to understand it, and then pull part of it away to add the next piece. So I'll tend to have you understand something, make sure you get it, and then we add another piece. So I kind of say, okay, what's this? And you go, well, it's a circle, right? And they'll say, okay, but you know what I have to do? I got to take this away and add something else. And now you see it as something different, and I have a better and more accurate vision of what I'm trying to describe. So I do this quite a bit in this course because you can't understand it if I give it to you all at once. It would be overwhelming. So I have to give you a piece and have you get it and then build on. And that goes back to what I told you last class. How many classes have we had?
One.
Okay, last class. And that's why it's so important to not miss class. Because if you miss class, you will not be able to put the pieces together. You'll only see a tiny bit and you won't get it. Last call for questions about anything at all. I'm not giving snacks. All right. Anybody? Okay. So what I want to talk to you about tonight is something that is kind of interesting. At least I find it interesting. I hope that it isn't going to be completely boring to you. But we're going to go back. We're going to deal with this a little bit from a different perspective, okay? And I don't teach high school law here, okay? So how many of you took a law class in high school? How many of you learned about that there's you have to read a bill 3 times and all that stuff. And then I don't teach any of that crap because I think that you probably learn it in high school, and it's that type of process isn't particularly important. So I'm not going to talk to you about statutes from that type of thing. I'm going to talk to you about something a little bit more advanced, and it's this. And the question that I raised to you is, where does the government get the rights to make laws?
Correct, people.
That is a correct answer. But do we all group together and sit down together and say, okay, government, make these laws? Although you elect people and they make rules, do you actually tell them what rules to make?
You can.
Can you? Can I?
Well, sure, you could write you could write Congress. Or you could write someone in power and say, can you change laws? Couldn't you do that?
Will they do it for me?
Not just for you. You need to have a certain percentage, I would say, that you would consider putting a motion through or to start the process if they deem that it's necessary.
Okay, I'm gonna turn this backwards on you a little bit. How many of you have been asked what laws you would like to have passed? How many of you have ever had this happen in your life? Where somebody government said, hey, listen, we got all this power here. What do you want?
Well, they don't ask you.
Well, and I can't tell them.
I'm not saying we can't tell them, but we push them.
No,
You can't.
I can't? So they don't ask anything. So we do elect people, and we do put them in the power of making those rules. There's definitely there. My question, though, is slightly different. Where did they actually get the right to pass laws from? And this is what I'm going to be dealing with for pretty much all of tonight. And by the way, we have so much material to cover in this class that I'm going to let you know. I don't know how many of you have had classes where you got off a little early. How many of you had that? Where you had... Okay. That will not happen in this course. We are so dense. And for those of you who arrived a little late, there are course outlines over there. They do set the midterm date, and that's probably one of the more important things. Okay, so let's... I need to pick on somebody, okay? Can I pick on you? You don't have to stand up. I'm not going to really pick on you. Okay? Can I have your name? Raymond. Raymond, I'm going to ask you a question, and if it's personal, you don't have to answer it. You can just do this. Did I talk to you about this, folks? Okay, in my classes, I too tend to interact with students, okay? And like I just did with Raymond, I sometimes will come and I'll ask you a personal question about yourself, right? And sometimes I don't know that this is not something you're comfortable with. So we're going to have a little signal. Like, so if I say, oh, where do you live? And you go, the stalker guy that's been chasing you is 3 rows back and he's just started taking notes and you don't want to answer that question. All you have to do is do this, okay? You know what that is? That's go away, you evil thing. Okay? So, but I'm going to ask you a question, okay? What country is your family from? Nigeria, okay? So, my family is from Ireland, okay? That's where my family's from. All right? So, I want you to imagine that Raymond and I, okay, decide that we're going to have a fight. He and I are going to have a fight. And what's your name?
Marie.
Marie?
Yeah.
We're going to go fight on Marie's lawn. Okay? So, Raymond and I are going to have a fight on Marie's lawn. And by the way, who's going to win?
No.
The Fighting Irish, folks, okay? Right? That's why we're called the Fighting Irish. I think I can take them. Okay? Even with my gimp arm. All right, so Raymond and I have a fight, and I win. Okay? And then I'm going to go knock on Marie's door and say, I just won the fight. I'm taking your house. Does that make sense to you?
No. No.
Why not?
You would have to fight it.
I didn't. I fight Roman right on her lawn. Right on her lawn, though. And I won the fight. Do I get her house?
No.
Why not? I won the fight.
It is
You
not
have
on
almost
the
nothing
paper.
to do with it.
It is not. You have not decided.
I decided. I'm the decider, and I decided I won.
You don't have, it's the,
Do I get to take her house?
no.
Well,
No?
there's a law that says you can.
What?
So you're probably getting to the point where there's a law that says you can.
Well, no, folks. We're talking a little bit before the laws, okay? So, if you understand that that doesn't make sense, you will understand why First Nations people can be a little confused and or upset about Canadian history. Because there was a war. Who was the war between?
Americans and the British.
No, that was a different war. Okay? The Canadian version of that,
Or it's English.
it was French versus English. It was Wolfe versus Montcalm. Right? Does anybody know where that war was? Where did the French and the British fight their fight?
You're correct. Plains of Abraham.
The Plains of Abraham. Good. Just outside of Quebec, old Quebec City. There's this thing. It's not that big. The Plains of Abraham, right? Really, it's about the size of. Well, my recollection is it's about the size of the Brandon University campus. There's a field, and they had a fight there, and who won? England. And then England went knocking on the people who lived here's door and said, "Hi, we just won the war. We're taking your house." Does that make sense?
No.
So, this is what happened, folks. So, we have England over here, and England is a colonizer. They took over lots of different places around the world, right? Lots of different places. And where? Where else did they do other than Canada? They didn't win. There was the fight for the United States, right? That the gentleman at the back alluded to. And who won that?
States.
The Americans kicked their ass, right? That was the Boston Tea Party, right? One if by land, two if by sea, Paul Revere and all that stuff. And yeah, they didn't win that one. So they didn't get to colonize the United States. So they decided to come up here and fight the French. And then when they won that, then they took the country. Right? That's kind of what happened. Where else did they do this, folks? Where else was... What? Is Nigeria... Was it an English colony? Okay. I don't know. I didn't know that for sure. Where else?
South Africa.
So I thought... people keep telling me that. And I thought South Africa was Dutch. Wasn't it the Boer Wars between the Dutch and things? But people who know better than me keep telling me South Africa was. And I always thought it was not the English, it was the Dutch. Okay? Well, we'll put a hold on that until someone... we don't need to know. Okay, what else?
Australia.
Australia for sure, right? Where they paddled down there. And they remember they arrived there. And I remember hearing the great story about how they got to Australia and they said, "Oh my God, is it ever hot here? This is the hottest country in the world. It is so hot." They said, "I can hardly wait till winter. It's so hot here." It was winter. Because they forgot that they're in the southern, things, and they forgot that the things were reversed. And then when summer came, they baked. Okay? Anyways, yeah, Australia was one. What else?
New Zealand.
Is New Zealand one? I don't know that for sure. Is it? Are you sure? It would make sense if Australia was, but I don't know that one. What else? What? Sri Lanka was an English colony? So we need somewhat. Either was or wasn't. There's something close to that was, though. What? India. Remember that? Ho, ho, ho. Dr. Livingston, I presume. When they're fighting the Bengal kangaroos, those tigers and stuff. Smallest area. Tiny little area. Hong Kong. Hong Kong was a British colony till, the last 15 years. They finally ceded. All over the place. The Falkland Islands. Anybody here from South America? Okay, where from?
Brazil.
Brazil? So this is pretty close, right? The Falkland Islands? They're off the coast of Argentina.
Down the south.
Yeah, down south, but close by.
Yeah, close by. It's right beside.
You were closer than I am right now, right?
I'm from south of Brazil, then I'm pretty close to Argentina. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so it's off Argentina. And this is one of the last wars that England was in, where these people down here, so we got this country way over here, and we got this South American thing, and we got this little island off the coast of Argentina, right? And about 20 years ago, they basically said, hey, you English big dogs, piss off. We've had enough of you. What are you going to do, right? You're way over there. We're way over here. And we don't need you anymore. You know, we fart in your general direction, you know, and all that stuff. And they, blah, 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 and they made all these noises. And what did England do? They sent the warships. And they lined them up. And they said, are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? Is that what you're saying to me? And there was a very short war. It was actually one of the last wars that England was in, was the war over Falkland Islands, which took about a couple months and it was done. Because there's no way that the Falklands could go against the English Navy. So it didn't last that long. But anyways, this was a war over this. And that was when they were saying, you're not leaving. Right? Because these people said, we want to be gone. They said, no, you're not. And they actually fought a war over it. Anyways, my point in this, folks, is that you have to understand, I cannot comment whether or not England should or shouldn't have done this. These words are not ones that I find useful in this course. I think that there's a valid debate whether they should or shouldn't have done it, but it's not for this course. What you have to know about this course is they did. Okay? They did do it. They decided, because they won this war, they get to make the rules. And these rules are still very important today. Okay? So what England did is they passed a document. So over here in England, it was actually in London, it was actually in the House of Parliament. They have a very similar system to ours, surprise, surprise, since they're the ones who made it. So what happened was they decided over there in England, just a sec, it's getting warm in here, ain't it? Is it? Yeah. All right. So yeah, see, I could still beat them. So over here in England, they basically said, all right, we're setting up a country over here. And how they did it was the same way that we make laws. They made a law. The difference is their law was for our country. So how does the government make laws, folks? This was not the hard part. How does a government make laws? They pass a statute. Thank you. So England, in their House of Parliament, in 1867, passed a statute. This particular statute, though, is the rules for Canada to make the rules. And this document is called our Constitution. It's our Constitution because it's the law by which our laws are made. But it's just an English statute. So they might have passed a Margarine Act in England saying that it's got to be a different color than butter. Oh, and we'll make Canada over there by passing a different statute. But you have to recognize it's exactly the same as any other statute. The thing about it is, it's England's. They passed it. And they said, here are the rules, Canada. Okay? So, this is just like any other statute. It's written down in a book, and it's got words on a page, and it says a bunch of things, and it would have a definition section, and it set out certain things, like, this is how Canada will work. So they said, we are going to have a federal government. We are going to have provincial government, and we're going to have provinces. How many? No.
4 at the time?
4. In 1867, there were only 4 provinces. So first trick question is, there were only 4. By the way, you don't have to know this history. Okay? You have to understand it in order to understand this document. But I'm never going to test you how many provinces were. That's like grade 8. Okay? But there were 4. Does anybody know which 4? Just take...
Ontario, Quebec, which is upper and lower Canada, and I think 2 of the maritime provinces.
I think it was Upper and Lower Canada, which was most of Ontario,
Yeah.
Quebec, and New Brunswick. Those were the 4 that were in it originally. And over time, more got added. When did Manitoba become part of this?
Much later.
Not that much. Not like Saskatchewan. It took quite a while. They're a little slow. All right? Does everybody know? 1870. Now, so what does that mean? That means that we originally started with these, you know, if this is kind of Canada, there's Hudson Bay in there somewhere, that we started with kind of this as being the Canada, and then Manitoba got added at some point in time, and how do you add it? Well, you got to go back to England and say, could you please change this statute and add this part to the Constitution? Because it's England's statute, right? So they're the ones that can change it. They're the ones who can set up these rules. So they said that there's going to be elections in Canada. How often, folks? How often do there have to be elections?
Every 5 years.
5 years. Good answer. There we go. So there has to be elections every 5 years. Why? Because in 1867, when we passed this statute, that's what England said. They could have said 6, they could have said 8, they could have said 3, they said 5. They said there's going to be capitals to these places and said here's where they're going to be. They set up the rules for the elections and electing people because we didn't have any rules. Or at least we didn't have any of these rules, right? So they said, we're going to have a federal government. It's going to have people that are elected. And we got, how many people do we have in the House of Parliament, folks? How many people get elected there? Right now, yeah. 3, that might be right, 3. It goes up and down. I think it's around 340, right? And it goes up and down. Does anybody know why it changes? Because in 1867, when this was set up, the amount of elected people is determined by the population of Quebec. So if the population of Quebec changes, when we have an election, it can change the number of seats there are in the House of Parliament. It doesn't change it very much. It's a formula. But sometimes you'll have 3 or 4 less, or 2 more, or whatever it is. And it's all because this is how England made it. So, at this point, I want you to understand that there are rules for the laws. And those rules are contained in something called the Constitution. And the Constitution is just an ordinary English statute. It's ordinary in England. It's kind of important over here. So the rules are determined by this document. I'm not here to teach you all about the Constitution, everything that's in it. That's not really what I feel is relevant in a business course, but there is something you do need to understand. So we have numbered sections of statutes, right? That's how they're listed. There's numbers in them. And there'll be one of them will say elections every 5 years. Another one will say the capital of Canada will be in Ottawa. You know, all of these things are in different sections of there. But the one I want you to understand, the 2 that I want you to understand, is section 91 and 92. So, when England set up how our country was going to work when it comes to laws, it said we're going to have provincial governments and federal governments. Did it have to do that? Could they have just made provincial governments? No federal governments? Provinces are responsible for making their own laws? Could have. They didn't. Could they have just made federal governments?
Yes.
Just say, okay, we're just going to have a Canadian government, and you elect them and they make the rules. We could have done that, right? But England had done this before. They actually were fairly good at creating these documents. And one of the things that they happened to believe in was there should be localized government rather than one rule for everybody. They wanted more localized government. But there's a problem because they said the federal government can make laws and the provincial government can make laws. Why is that a problem?
Conflict.
What if they don't make the same laws? What if one says drive on the left-hand side and it says no, drive on the right? So England was sophisticated enough, they'd probably ran into this problem before, that they knew they had a way of addressing it. What is one way it could have been addressed, folks? Go ahead.
By giving one the power to overrule the other?
Yeah, you could make one more important than the other, right? You could say, if there's a conflict, this one wins. They could have done that. The problem with that approach is it basically says if this one is the star one that gets to always override, this one could end up with no power at all, right? So they didn't do that. They chose another method. Anybody have another idea what another way they could have done this is? All right? Okay, can you just stand up here? Come up here for a second, okay? Try visually, okay? What do you want to be, federal or provincial? Okay, she's federal government, I'm provincial government. We can make rules. How can we make rules that'll work without having her beat me or me beat her?
You could talk about it.
Let people choose.
We could negotiate. Are we going to get along?
Sometimes.
What about the rest of the time? Nightmare. Okay. What else could we do?
Let people choose by themselves.
Yeah, pick the one you like. I don't think that will work. What else can we do? You get to make laws, I get to make laws, but we can't have conflict. How do we keep them from being conflict?
Clearly divide what they're.
Separate the part.
Thank you very much. She got the right answer here. We can divide up what you're allowed to make laws on. She can make laws about certain things. I can make laws about other things. Right? And that's what they did. So, if you look at the Constitution, and I want to remind you of something, folks. I teach you what I want you to know, and doing research on these, especially this type of area, very, very bad. Okay? It will not become clear. If you try to read this statute, it's a statute made in Old English in 1867. If you try and understand it with your modern day knowledge, your head will pop. Okay? It won't work. Don't do it. Do not go outside of this class for information ever. But the textbook is inside the class, and any information I give you is inside the class. But please don't Google these concepts or go and take a look at them to try and understand them better, because when you do that, you change the boundaries of this course to something I cannot control or test you on properly. Right? I'll give you what you need to know. I sometimes simplify things so that they're easier for you to understand. And this is going to be one of these examples. But you do have to understand the basics. So, Section 91 says these areas are for federal. And it lists them. Section 92 says these are for provincial governments. And it lists them. Because this is over 100 years old, it's probably the case that whoever does make the laws on them was given the rights to make the laws. But you've got to be a little careful with that. It's not the right approach. It's sort of a shortcut that normally works. But in order for you to assess whether the right government makes a law, you have to know what they were given. So I'm going to tell you. Or maybe I'll make you figure it out. Who was given the right to make laws about postal services? And you'll notice, using that thing I said is a little bit dangerous, but normally works, we have, what, do we have Manitoba Post? What do we got? And is the price of stamps the same here as it is in Montreal? Yeah. Right? So we have, the Canadian government was given the right to make laws. That's what we're dealing with. To make the laws about postal services. Defense. Do we have a Saskatchewan Navy? Some people won't get the joke. What's the joke? Why don't we have a Saskatchewan Navy, folks?
They haven't got any water.
They have no water, right? At least Manitoba's got Hudson's Bay, right? But they could maybe have a Navy out there, but Saskatchewan. So could we have a Saskatchewan Army? No, because they're wimps. No, that's not why. Okay, I like to make fun of... Anybody here from Saskatchewan? Okay, sorry. Okay. So in fairness, the Rough Riders sure kick our ass all the time, don't they? They do. Isn't that true? Any football people out there? I'm not really a football person, but I know we get our ass kicked by Saskatchewan all the time. It's true. All right. So, armies and defense of the country is given to federal government. Okay? Money. Do we have an Ontario $3 bill? Could we have an Ontario $3 bill? No, Ontario cannot pass rules like that. They cannot make their own money. All laws about money, which includes what denominations, what form they're going to take, how it's going to work, have to be made by the federal government. They're the money people. What about education?
Provincial.
So if you are a teacher in this province, does your check come from the federal government or the provincial government? Right? And what did Ontario have that we've never had in the education? They had something. We've never had it. Because they made up a rule for something that they wanted that we never wanted. What was it? Anybody know?
The strike.
The strike would be provincial, but what?
Don't they have for university?
They do?
I don't know. That's what my boyfriend goes to school in Ontario. He said that people that were born in Ontario get like a certain amount of money for their university courses. So I don't know if he's lying or what.
You don't know if your boyfriend's lying? Okay, this is a bad thing. Okay, we won't go into that. Okay, all right. You guys maybe you're getting too young because it was probably banned before you were all grown up. A grade 13, right? Ontario always used to have a grade 13. We used to laugh at it, right? You know, we had only go to grade 12. It took them an extra year, right? They had a grade 13 because that's the law that they set up. Yeah.
What's the thing that Quebec has that they have to go into more schooling after they graduate high school?
I don't know. SAGEP? Is it called
Yeah.
SAGEP?
Yeah.
There's stage up for certain things, and they also, what she's saying about with the money, if you're from Quebec or you live in Quebec for at least a year, your tuition is a lot cheaper than somebody who's from outside of Quebec.
That's true here too, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have no idea what these courses cost, folks. I have no idea. I don't know whether how much they cost or whether you're getting any value for your dollar. But does anybody know how much this course costs if you're a Manitoba resident? How much is it? Anybody know? I have no idea.
3 and change.
$300? Really? All that for $300? Really? What if you're not?
600.
It's a way more expensive. 700.
700 or 800?
700 or 800? So that's a little more than double. That's not that bad. I thought it was going to be more. To be honest with you, I thought it was going to be more. Okay, so, and this is because when England made this statute, they said the province will be responsible for education, laws about education. 1867, they passed this thing. What about banks?
Federal.
True banks, which are known as Schedule A banks. There are 5 of these, I think. There are 6. What are they? The true banks. These are considered to be legally true banks. There's not that big a difference. What is it? RBC? What?
BMO.
BMO?
Scotia.
CIBC? Scotia?
Bank of Montreal.
And
That's BMO. We got that one.
NTD.
TD?
Yeah, 5.
CIBC. That's it. Did I do that?
Yeah.
Anyways, those banks, the laws about them are covered by the federal government. Other financial institutions are not considered to be banks, and therefore the rules are provincial.
So
And they're not the same rules.
the credit unions goes under the law of the provincial.
Yep. So, true banks have to have deposit, by law, they have to have deposit insurance. They've got to guarantee your deposits in a true bank up to, I think it's 100,000 now. It used to be 60. It was 60 forever. And now I think it's 100,000 bucks. So you can't lose that money. It's guaranteed. I don't think that the credit unions are legally obliged to give you that, but I was told by a student the other day that it's unlimited under the credit union. I don't know how it can be. How can it be unlimited, right? What if I've got $10 zillion in it, right? And it goes, anyways, they say it's unlimited. But that isn't according to a law as far as I am aware. Okay, citizenship? Yeah. Indian affairs, the right to make laws about First Nations people. That is federal. And that's under a statute that's, the big one is the Indian Act. The Indian Act is the statute that sets up the laws about, treaty pay and all of those things that they have rules with respect to. A pretty important aspect of this is that the federal government was also given a right to what is called direct and indirect taxation. So these have a meaning, but because we have both direct and indirect in the federal system, it means the federal government can tax you any way they want. They have a wide power to make laws about taxation. So what's the big tax, folks? What's the one that takes all your money? Your income tax is a huge tax. It's a lot. Like 50% of my income goes to the federal government. Because that is considered to be an indirect tax. And the province cannot tax that way because, according to the Constitution, they were only given the right to direct tax. One type of tax. And that primarily means, what type of tax does the province have?
Provincial tax, their sales tax.
It's a sales tax, right? So their primary tax is a sales tax. And there's a problem here because they can't raise enough money with that tax. They just can't do it, right? And they don't have the legal right to tax any other way because in 1867, when England set this up, they didn't give them that right. So even though you will notice, sometimes this confuses people, that there's a provincial portion of your income tax, the right to make laws about that